Welcome to Activate Your Introvert, the weekly radio show to uncover and unlock the intrapreneurial skills in your business. In this week's show, Introvert Myth of the Week. Introverts don't speak to strangers. Tip of the week, reducing the cost of staff turnover. And a discussion with Beatrix Schmidt. Beatrix is a sleep coach, professional speaker, and author who helps professionals to overcome insomnia and sleep problems. But just before speaking to Beatrix, happy birthday. In 1976, that's 45 years ago, One Man and His Dog was first transmitted on the BBC. So, happy birthday, One Man and His Dog. The connection between man and dog and the transmission of instructions without words is incredible to watch. The dog stopping any sheep from escaping. Wouldn't it be good if we had something like that to stop people escaping and reducing staff turnover? Okay, terrible connection. But, I know that you already know that staff turnover costs money. The interviews, the adverts, the time without a person, the time training them, the time waiting until they're as good as the lever. But are you missing something when it comes to staff turnover? One of my friends was shocked yesterday. One of her staff left. Yes, the one that had seemed so happy. So much so, my friend started doubting all the work she'd ever been doing, which is probably why she called me, but don't let her know that. It turns out her leaver was a quiet achiever who got on with the job, and my friend just got used to her hard work. But she was happy. It only happened because she was approached by an agency who offered more money. More people leave because they feel undervalued and underappreciated than because of the money. How many CIPD reports have you seen with that kind of information? You know that in your head, just sometimes not your heart. Both extroverts and introverts tell you when they're unhappy, but one group does it loudly. Chances are the extroverted and unhappy members of your staff shout about being unhappy. The introverted ones tell you, but you may not have noticed, and they only did it once. Even then it was quiet, just like a hint of unhappiness. It's a bit like the paint I bought to do the wall. It looks white despite being called hint of orange, until I look at it with something orange on the wall. Then it stands out. So, if you got better at hearing the signs earlier, you could do something about it. When they've already been approached, it's too late. It's always easy to overlook people who just get on with the job and don't complain. There are always noisier people who complain more. But introverts are a third to half of your team. Isn't it time to give more time to understanding introverts? Do let me know what tip you'd like to activate the intrapreneurial skills in your business, or what introvert myth you'd like exposed. Drop me an email, give me a call, or add it as a comment to your review on the iTunes store. I would love to hear from you. But now it's time to speak to Beatrix. Welcome, Beatrix.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Before we even get into the whole subject.
I'm more of an introverted person. Generally, that tends to surprise people because I'm also a speaker. I definitely like my own company, sitting in a corner, quiet around me.
Okay, I get much the same where people say to me, "Oh, you can't be an introvert because you're a speaker," and even to the point, and you'll smile at this one, where I've been told you can't be an introvert because you like bright colours and bright orange.
Yes, absolutely. I like bright colors too.
Yes,
Not orange though, but
you have
yeah.
more taste than me, obviously.
Oh, it's just different.
Do you find a difference between introverts, extroverts when it comes to sleep problems?
Yes, that's actually, one of the things that I got really fascinated about when I started working with people over 6 years ago. is what you see is the personality traits impact our behavior, right? And you see that in your work as well. And what I've seen that the difference is what we do during the day, either as an introvert or as an extrovert, that pushes the boundaries, therefore affects the sleep. One of the examples in terms of an introverted person is actually my example, where I liked my own company so much that I often stayed with my negative thoughts for so long that it actually stopped me being able to switch off in the evening, because I'm also an analytical type person. And I think you might agree.
There are many introverts.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up at the end of the day, when it's quiet around me, dissecting everything that happened during the day, maybe even self-judgment. And that analytical part can become negative. And again, when I look at the sleep problems that people experience, we need to look at, is this a negative effect to your sleep, or is this a positive effect? Not everything has to be a problem, right?
So sleep problems, what is a sleep problem? Is that like a bad night, or is it constantly sleeping badly?
That's a really great question, and I often talk about it. People often have a misconception about what that range is, and at what point do we actually need to seek help from it. How many times have we heard in conversation, yeah, I'm tired but I'm fine, or I've had a really stressful period but I'm okay. Like almost sometimes we discount the fact that we are sleep deprived or we are struggling. So just to give you kind of the three things that I normally point out to people, because it then helps them to kind of figure out where they're at on that scale. And again, it's a scale rather than a black or a white thing. The first thing I always start with is there is over 64 different types of sleep problems within the medical field. Most people have never even heard about more than maybe 5 of them. So the reality of the situation, if you are struggling as you're listening to the podcast, is you've got to seek professional help. You've got to understand where you are on that scale. And generally, we don't know where we are on that scale because we're only seeing our own sleep, right? So that's the first thing, is don't discount your problems. The second one is generally the insomnia type problems. And again, insomnia is a sleep disorder, but the one that I work with in terms of the professionals is related to our lifestyles. So this is where the sleep problem generally means that you're not either falling asleep, sleeping through the night, and then waking up refreshed at least 3 times a night for a period of 6 weeks to 3 months, and this becomes now a new pattern.
If I wake up 2 or 3 times a night over a number of nights, that's setting a pattern that becomes a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Referring back to what I just said before, is that becoming a problem? So normally what happens is you're not feeling 100% during the day. You're not waking up refreshed in the morning. And then the third one that I would like to mention is short-term problems. So this is where you might have had something really difficult happen to you. And obviously the last couple of months, it's been every single part of our life has changed. So that would consider being a significant life event. But when you're no longer able to return back to good sleep, so this tends to be a first 2 weeks tends to be okay. But if it continues for longer than 2 weeks, then again, you need to start seeing or reaching for help, because then it becomes your new pattern and you're not able to now return back to good sleep. So these are the three main things that I normally talk about.
The one I really picked up on was the last one, where you said if something happens, if it goes on for more than 2 weeks, then you're setting a new pattern, and that could be a problem. Obviously, if it was I'm now sleeping like a baby, that's not a problem, which I suspect is not a good phrase to use anyway.
I always have a little giggle about it. Which baby? Is it the baby that sleeps peacefully, or is it the baby that cries 100 times a night and wakes up everybody in the house, right?
Absolutely.
So pick the right baby if you're aiming to sleep like a baby.
How much sleep do we need?
Scientifically, and accordingly to the National Sleep Foundation, it depends on age groups, but generally as an adult, we need about 7 to 9 hours. But one of the things that I've seen over my work, which relates more to sort of the personality traits, introversion, extroversion, and other type of personality traits as well, is how our 24 hours allows us to either get enough sleep, or behaviors, habits, routines actually stop us to be able to get enough sleep. And the other thing I'd like to add to this, how many hours, is think about you as a person, how you're able to prepare for sleep physically, mentally, and emotionally. Because how many hours isn't just about the hours themselves, it's how you rested, you're able to sleep, how easily you're able to transition from the day to the night instead of overthinking. And again, introversion tends to bring a bit of overthinking into our lives. And work with those three elements rather than just the number, because you've got to bring that quality in.
What tip would you offer somebody that's an introvert to sleep better?
So introvert, the things that I see as a commonality, as a problem, there can be versions of this, is sort of the racing thoughts. And that tends to relate more to maybe someone who is introverted, because we don't tend to necessarily discuss our thoughts and our negative thoughts or worries. What I found over the years is actually, for me as an introvert and even my clients, is actually make time thinking, but way before bedtime. Because what happens when you climb into bed, it's all quiet around you, you don't actually have anything else to do. That's when the thoughts can come back racing and start being analyzing more and negative more. So create time to serve your introverted part and let your thoughts go crazy, because what happens is then you no longer have to spend the time at night doing that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So find a time during the day, or I guess even better during the evening, when you can let your thoughts just do what they like, so that they've gone by the time it goes to bedtime. Like that. You said that particularly works with introverts. Is there something different that you'd say to extroverts?
So the other thing I find with extroverts that is slightly different is overcommitment, committing to too many things. Either currently it's more maybe online events, or maybe keeping the phone on for literally until the moment you go to bed. I think introverts are better at putting the phone on airplane mode, or maybe even turning them off, than extroverts. So sometimes
That's quite interesting, actually, because I'll go to bed and 2 or 3 hours before I go to bed, the phone is off.
Right.
My partner, the phone is on all night long.
Yeah. And this is, again, you start to see the fun side of this kind of bigger picture of sleep, is those individualities and personality traits. So extroverts tend to keep going. And again, it's just a tendency. You might have a slightly different situation, but this is what I found. So one of the things that I suggest for extroverts, you honor the protection of the time to prepare for sleep as well as for sleep. Turning the phone off, maybe not an hour before, but 30 minutes before, so that your brain and your body can actually prepare for sleep in a proactive way, rather than you thinking it's a switch. It's not a switch, it's a process.
I'm sure that many of the listeners will want to get back in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Through my website, which is thesleepdeepmethod.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.
And now it's time for Introvert Myth of the Week. Those crazy stories that I hear and you hear, but some people actually believe. Introverts don't like to talk. A post I put on LinkedIn recently got a lot of people talking. It was about saying hello and how much more human people have become since lockdown. In London, if I say hello when walking past somebody on my daily exercise, they normally look at me as odd. But since lockdown, they reply. This led to a debate about whether introverts like conversation, and the simple answer from those calling me is yes, they do, despite the myth. The issue is that many have was a dislike of getting stuck in small talk and not wanting to end the conversation. Turns out that's not only an introvert thing. Extroverts wanting to end conversations? Well, there's a thought for another week.
Thank you for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I'd love to see your reviews on the iTunes store. Thank you once again, and catch up with you next week.